What is up, everyone? Matt McKeever here. Let me know if you guys can hear and see me in the comments because I'm home alone today. So usually I've got Peter, the producer, watching over me to make sure that we've got audio and visual working, but I'm home alone. So please let me know in the comments whether you guys can hear and see me. We'd greatly appreciate that. Love to hear how your Friday's going as well. And yeah, I figured I'd maybe take today's episode in a little bit different direction. So I rolled up kind of a small joint. I don't know how long I'll stay on this live stream. I'll really leave that up to you guys. So if you guys jump in the comments, ask me a bunch of questions, I'm down to hang out. Otherwise, if not, I'm also cool with that. So hit me up. Let's treat this kind of like a ask me anything. But before I jump into it, one thing I was going to share with you guys or talk about, let's get the screen share up, is this post from Gary Vee. So I just kind of felt like this was very timely or whatever. Also, I just realized, I don't know if I've done a live stream on Facebook and Twitch where I smoke. Maybe that'll get me in trouble. Maybe I can't smoke, actually. Let me know if I'm allowed to do that in the comments. If anyone that knows that shit's watching. But anyways, I thought this was a really good post from Gary Vee. This is one of those things we're kind of sharing behind the scenes, right? And so I just this definitely recently has hit home for me. So out of my 250 days a year I work, there are 7 to 23 days where I'm like, fuck this shit. And I definitely know that feeling. So I just thought I'd put that out there for anyone else that's maybe been grinding in 2021 pretty good, and maybe it's starting to get to you, or maybe just quarantine and the world around you is starting to get to you. I could also understand that, but spring is just around the corner, so I think it'll be all good. Now I'm super paranoid. I don't think I can actually. Like that would get me in trouble, so I'll save that for after the show. But hit me up in the questions. Let me know what's going on. First question I see here. Undo my screen share. First question I got here is from Aquitictos 501. If I don't have a Canadian residence, can I invest in real estate in Canada? You likely can, but it may be more prohibitive. You may actually want to look at investing in like a REIT if you want exposure to the Canadian real estate market. But definitely I would reach out to an expert, talk to a lawyer, an accountant, find out the tax and legal consequences if you're not a Canadian resident, because we do have, or certainly at least some provinces, but I believe we've got taxes and stuff like that. So something you'll want to be aware of. Awesome. I'm glad that you guys can hear and see me. Appreciate that, Arthur. When do you want to retire? Chris, I think that this is always just a moving target for me. So there's not like a date or a dollar amount per se. I think that I'll just go through ebbs and flows of different projects and different passions. So for me, I don't necessarily see a specific finish line. Like I know for me, like retiring from the rat race was the key. That's when I really feel like I got to buy back myself, right? Building up that financial fortress of solitude, just saving, investing diligently, all that stuff. So since 2016, I feel like even though I may work a lot, and while I may also share things like what I just shared with you guys on the Gary Vee thing, it's still not, it's never still the same grind that working at the 9 to 5 grind was. So definitely not necessarily looking to retire from things. I think for me, it's just about keeping the right balance of different projects and passions and things of that nature. I'm grinding some herbs right now. Awesome, man. Ken say and tell us more specifically why fuck this. I don't even think that there's always good reasons. I think that I don't know if Gary Vee, I didn't actually get a chance to watch the video that this was based upon, so I don't even know the context of what he was saying fuck it to. But I think there's definitely times in the last year where I'm just like, man, humanity, like fuck this shit. I should just Atlas shrug and disappear and buy a compound in the middle of nowhere and just like poof, puff of smoke sort of thing. But probably won't do that. And instead, I think it's just sometimes you almost just need that like pressure valve, right? So I think also that energy of like, fuck this, or that pressure valve of like, maybe I do want to poof, that there's real value in that. Like, I think just whatever, that energy pents up, that frustration, that friction, that whatever it happens to be. And I think obviously it's going to be different for each individual, but whatever that happens to be for you in your specific situation, at least for me, oftentimes it's 1,000 cuts. For me, it's never like a binary moment where it's like, ooh, it's like that, straw that breaks the camel's back. But I think these days, even more so than in the past, it's almost the opportunity cost. So like, I can see like I'm capable of so much more and I want to accomplish so much more. And yet sometimes I can't figure out how to avoid the opportunity cost and get all those things accomplished in the same timeline. So it's one of those things where, again, like, you just, oftentimes my eyes are bigger than my stomach when it comes to my ambitions. I think sometimes that's when reality doesn't match up with your initial expectations, that you find yourself in that, like, okay, like, fuck this. Again, Gary saying out of 250 days, maybe 7 to 23, that's like 5 to 10% of the days. That sounds about right. I would say it's probably even a little bit less than that in the big scheme of things. I would say there's probably like, and I'm sure other people find other ways or other approaches to it as well. So I'm not even saying that, I'm definitely not saying that my way is a healthy way or a good way to approach anything. But it's the way that I do. So I find like I almost sometimes just need to get there, get through whatever that is for that day or those couple days. And then like after that, it's almost like a reset button where you're ready to jump back into it. Or at least it's always been that way before. What else is going on? Appreciate everyone jumping in the comments here. Hey, Matt, would love to hear your thoughts on goal pivoting, i.e. renting rooms to students and moving to multifamily due to COVID, schooling at home, adopting to change. Yeah, I think goal pivoting is a big pivot. So rather than necessarily goal pivoting, I got a feeling what you're talking about here is maybe like strategy pivoting. So I'm going to maybe differentiate here a little bit. We've got like tactics, which are like really boots on the ground, devils in the details, sort of standard operating procedures. Then we've got strategy, which is kind of the general principles of the investment philosophy we're using. So that might be like a student rental property, or that might be flipping or Airbnbs or whatever the case may be. And then finally, we've also got like your overarching goal. So just because you were investing in a certain strategy or using a certain tactic, and maybe you got to pivot that, I wouldn't necessarily associate that with having to pivot your entire goal. So like your goal might be, I want to buy an island. And then maybe you decide to pivot that goal and you're like, nope, I don't want to buy the island. If you're Gary Vee, I want to buy the New York Jets. Okay, well, like that is a big pivot in your goal. But the strategy might be like, hey, I'm trying to become famous as a YouTuber. It's not working out for me. I'm going to pivot and try and make it on Twitch, or I'm going to pivot and try and start a podcast. I'm going to pivot and try and build a real estate business. That's more the strategy or the means that you're going to acquire the overall goal with. Hopefully that makes sense. So in your case, I think what you're talking about is really just pivoting either the tactic, if we're talking about an individual property, or the strategy, if we're talking about your overall investment philosophy on how to achieve your goal. Because again, real estate investing, I think for the vast majority of individuals, is a means to an end, right? It's just a very safe, paint by numbers sort of approach to business, which allows us to really easily get into it. And again, it's a business that's been around for a while. So a lot of us have a perception of relatively low risk. Thoughts on St. Catharines market at the moment, looking into a flip there specifically. Yeah, Daniel, St. Catharines seems to be a very hot market. We're every month we're doing an update with our local expert there, Kayla. And yeah, that market's definitely on fire, St. Catharines, Niagara. One thing I'll just say in general, if it's your first time doing a project in St. Catharines, I've heard from various contractors that St. Catharines sometimes isn't the easiest city to work with when it comes to your renovations. So I know a lot of people, when they're doing their first flip, first of all, they usually underestimate their timelines. And then secondly, if you're not familiar with the city, you might also be underestimating your timelines if you're not factoring in things like COVID, or just like maybe general, if the city of St. Catharines has a bit more friction or is a little bit slower sometimes to get back to renovators and investors. So again, depending upon how experienced you are there, I see no problems, or just kind of giving you a heads up that maybe you should add a little bit of time to your timeline. What do you think about markets in Delta, BC? I couldn't even find it on a map. I don't know if Delta is like a river delta or if that's referring to a city. So I probably shouldn't even comment. Got a good tax guy in and around Toronto. Yes, hit up Galleon CPA. Ask for Mitt or Pearsanth. Let me pull it up here and we'll get it on the screen share for you. Screen share, boom. We got Mitt CPA. That was their old name. They're now Galleon, so definitely recommend you guys go check them out. They are good guys and business partners of mine, so I may be slightly biased. But a lot of real estate investors use them in the network. I think the big thing, whether you decide to go with Galleon or anyone else, the really big thing when it comes to real estate investing and having a tax professional or accountant on your team is you want that individual, that team, to work with other people that look like you, that invest like you, right? So don't go to an accountant that specializes in dentists. You want to go to an accountant that specializes in real estate investors, or at least works with a bunch of real estate investors. Again, the level of specialization you want from your accountant probably depends upon the level of seriousness you have from a real estate investing philosophy, right? Or what type of business or empire we're trying to build. If you only ever want to get to 5 properties, you can probably honestly use just about any accountant and you'll be fine. If you want to get to 500 properties, you should probably be using a specialized accountant that at least has a handful of clients that have done that before or are currently doing that. And that's just trying to set yourself up for the path of least resistance. U.S. residents can buy in Canada, underwritten a few like that, just need to find the right lender. So appreciate you sharing on the lending perspective there. Do property management companies arrange lawn and snow? Is it per occurrence for snow? Eric, you can do either. So you can sign a contract for the year, or you can alternatively do it by the snowfall or by use space. Whether your property management company does it or arranges it or isn't involved whatsoever is really up to the individual property management company and the situation you negotiate with them. So I would say, obviously we use internal property managers. All my internal property managers line up our snow removal and lawn maintenance because that's part of the job description that we give them. What did you do before all this? I was a CPA. So if you guys haven't seen, I've got some old videos on my YouTube channel talking about me working as a CPA as well as giving advice to CPAs. So definitely encourage you to check that out if you want to dive more into my backstory. And I think we've done 1 or 2 backstory videos, but essentially worked as a CPA, went to university, worked as a CPA for roughly 10 years. My memory, I may be off by a year or 2. But essentially worked for just over 5 years in public accounting, then went and worked for a publicly traded pharmaceutical company as the financial controller, got a lot of exposure to, working for a publicly traded company, doing their financial statements, helping out where I, in moments with the management and discussion analysis and all that fun stuff. And then essentially at age 31, quit or retired from the rat race because I didn't like the corporate culture and we had just been acquired by another company and I knew they were going to shut down our division eventually anyways. So ended up retiring a little bit earlier than I expected, but it all worked out in the end. Doubled down on real estate investing, started this YouTube channel, and fast forward almost 50 employees later, and here we are. So and that's a lot of that has all happened in the last 5 years. But essentially, I first started investing in 2010, just buying student rentals, bought a student rental a year for a couple of years, and hit a roadblock because I didn't know any better at the time. And so CIBC told me I need to go get a better job. So I literally changed my career trajectory just to try and get more mortgages so I could quit my job faster. Seems like a circular logic, but it all worked out. Tell us about Welland, Ontario investment. I'm not an expert on Welland, but I do pay enough attention there. If you want to see us talk more about Welland, jump over and watch some of the videos with Kayla, who we actually already were talking about earlier today. And she's breaking down some pretty interesting deals in Welland. There was one we recently showed, triplex, that was on the market. I think it was listed for 200 and sold for 265, I want to say, something like that. Anyways, Welland seems like an interesting market to me. It seems to be in high demand. Seems like you can get solid rent. Long term, I imagine that Port Colborne will merge, and that's probably a net benefit as well. Just making it into a larger CMA area. What's up, Kellen? I heard you guys went firm on deal. Could you do dipper in the details? Oh, could I jump in the details? How you found it? How was the negotiation going, etc.? Sure. Yeah. So I actually may not even be fully aware of all the deals we're doing. So Jeff was teasing that we might be looking at getting another couple buildings that I don't think we've officially gone firm on yet. So I imagine you're talking about the 29 units we went firm on in St. Thomas. So yeah, we went firm on 29 units in St. Thomas. That was actually an on-market deal. So there was a bidding date. We bid on the bidding date. We were relatively aggressive. We went in over asking, and we had a clean offer, which isn't for the faint of heart, especially when you're getting into the multi-million-dollar range. But for us, it made sense. We were able to acquire it just a little under $100,000 a unit. The property definitely needs renovations. I believe it comes with a handful of vacancies, which is usually a net benefit for us. And yeah, looking forward to adding it to the portfolio. It'll be the first St. Thomas property we've got, but hopefully not the last one. Usually, once we kind of commit to a city or a region and we buy a property there, we naturally want to go and buy more properties there. So you guys got any deals currently in Ingersoll, St. Thomas, Chatham, or London? We would love to buy some more multifamilies. If you guys got them to me for 100 to 125 a unit, that would even be more wonderful. Let's see what else is going on here in the comments. We got Kellen. What's up, Kellen? Kellen and I were spending a bunch of time earlier today shooting episodes of the On Fire podcast. So if you guys have been sleeping on that, make sure you jump over, check out the On Fire podcast. We're doing episodes every other week now. And it's worth jumping into the old ones, though, because we've got, like, you know, Meet Kevin, Graham Stephan, Mike Van Hout, all from like 2018, right? When they were all part of like ORAC and other things like that. Sometimes you just need a fuck it day. Exactly. You are inspiring, Matt. Appreciate that. Do you ever smoke with your tenants? No, that seems like it'd be a bad idea. One of the first rules, I think, of landlording is friendly, but never friends. Now, you can make exceptions to this if you want, especially if you're very hands-on with your portfolio. But one, if you've got a property manager, it's better to have that property manager interact with your tenants direct rather than them having the opportunity to circumnavigate your systems and processes through your property manager. But even if I was self-managing, I don't think it's wise to become friends with your tenants, just because you're going to be mixing that relationship and business. And there's always the risk that something could go sideways. Now, again, I'm sure 90% of the time, everything would go well because tenants are actually just people, and, you know, people are just people. So 90% plus of people are great. But, you know, it is something to be aware of. I would really encourage you guys, before you become too friendly or before you become friends, consider my words of advice. It's one of my 10 commandments of landlording, which is be friendly but never friends. Another one is company policy, no exceptions. And it would be hard to say to your friend, company policy, no exceptions. Matt hammering out killer content daily as usual. We just saw it. Yeah, exactly. And hello, Matt. How can I start real estate investing with small capital? I currently have a side job, but have accumulated some capital from my previous jobs. Is it possible to partner with someone in real estate investing? Absolutely, right? If you guys haven't been paying attention, just last night, actually, Kellen was on as well, the pitch. And so that's literally where you guys could pitch myself, Ben, and a guest investor every Thursday night. And we actively have money. We are honestly interested in deals. We have done some deals with people that have came on the pitch. In fact, it seems like Ben, you know, funds just about every deal that comes on the pitch. So if you guys are interested, there's links on every episode of the pitch that'll take you there to apply, or you can jump over to my Instagram and you'll find a link in my bio there as well. Are you ready to start investing in Atlantic Canada? Yeah, we are, but it turns out you guys won't accept us. We were researching having a couple of our guys go out to Halifax, and it sounded like Halifax said, thanks, but no thanks, bud. So let me know if we're wrong there. But to the best of my knowledge, I believe that Halifax won't have us. But as soon as Halifax will let us in, we would more than happy come there and wholesale. I'm not going to fully cover this, but planning to bail from the socialist Canada is turning into, you know what? I think that there's always a choice there. So there's a choice that you can either try and stand your ground, be the change, die on that hill, or the choice is you can migrate to friendlier harbors. For me right now, I think this is more of a stand and fight thing. So I'm more about, let's buy thousands and thousands of acres, go start our own society rather than just give up on Canada right away. But yes, I definitely like the idea of having the current Canadian government have way less say in my life. I think just the more space I got, the less say they'll have. What else is going on here? You should be a country singer. All right. Well, that's definitely something no one's ever said to me before, but I appreciate it. One of my buddies in high school, Neil, he was going to go through for that. Hey, Matt, do you think cap rates will go up if interest rates go up? Do I think cap rates will go up if interest rates go up? Bobby, I think the first thing you're going to see is a lot of pressure on prices. So could that mean the cap rates could go up? Essentially, I would expect that a lot of investors would be demanding a greater return. Now, first of all, I know the moment we start talking about cap rates, people are going to get triggered. So I'm talking about cap rates in conversational language, the way investors talk about it, or the way Bobby asked me, for the one guy that literally gets so salty every time the word cap rate comes out of my mouth. We got into a pretty long discussion in one of the comment sections on an old video. But anyways, yeah, I know what you mean. And yeah, I think investors will start demanding higher cap rates, and that may force sellers to actually have to start selling their properties at more favorable terms to buyers if we see that buyer pool shrink. However, right now, there's a lot of capital out there chasing the very few properties that are on the market. And so unless you see drastic changes in interest rates, I don't think you're going to see drastic changes in cap rates. If anything, I think we're going to continue to see more pressure as more and more capital piles into the real estate market. Do you take capital gains into consideration when selling a property? Don't you pay 50% on half your income when making over 150 of profit? Yeah, Raz, there's actually a bunch to unpart there. So obviously this is not going to be specific tax or legal advice, and you should always talk to an accountant about your specific situation. But in general, what you're asking is, should you take into consideration taxes when thinking about investment? Yeah, I think it's naive to not take into consideration the tax implications and what you're going to net of tax with your investments. Now, what you're asking about is capital gains tax. So understand here in Canada, we've got every country has a specific capital gains tax, or they may not have a capital gains tax. But in Canada, we've got one. And the way it works is it's essentially going to be 50% of whatever the capital gain was is going to be included in your taxable income. So you can essentially think of it as being like half of it's taxable is the way people will often explain it. Now, what that means is if I sell a property and net $100,000 capital gain, I'll be taxed on 50% of it. Now, if I'm in the highest tax bracket, as you asked, then 50% of that 50% will be taxes. So essentially on $100,000, I'll end up paying $25,000 in taxes if it was capital gains. However, if I'm in the business of flipping real estate, there's a chance the government may disagree with me and actually say, hey, no, you know what? You're actually in the business of being a flipper. And so this is active income, not capital gains. And so this is why it's so important that you sit down with a good tax accountant, like we were talking about my buddies at Galleon earlier. But make sure you actually understand for your specific situation what's right, because general advice on the internet is not going to help you in a specific situation. Hey, what's this? Cody, hey, I just found your channel and the Burr method. I have a rental and house I live in and cash. Looking to get house I live plus cash and looking to get into more rentals. I enjoy your channel. What would you recommend to further learning? Cody, obviously I'm biased, but I'd recommend checking out Cashflow Tribe. It's my education company. Go over www.cashflowtribe.com. There's a bunch of free courses there. So even if you don't want to pay us any money, you can just educate yourself for free. It's Canadian specific content. So hopefully that's helpful. And then otherwise, if you decide to join the community, I teach a class there every Monday night. and there's 3 other live classes taught every weeknight, like for every week. So 4 live classes every week. Plus, we've got hundreds of on-demand hours of training. So you can go through and take a whole series of different courses. I believe we've got some stuff up there even on BRRRRs, but a lot of stuff also on financing, goal setting and planning, which is really important. So if you're just kind of getting into real estate right now, Cody, to make money or to get rich, that's an okay starting point. But with time, what we really want to do is take that and mature, develop it into a very specific goal, and ideally make that a SMART goal. And behind that SMART goal should really be like a powerful why. So if you're interested in learning more about that, I've got a free ebook. You can check it out on my Instagram profile. Just go there. It'll be link in bio. And it's my Discover Your Why ebook. And the reason it's important you discover your why is it's just going to allow you to commit so much more to whatever it is, the investment philosophy you want to undertake. I've got around 400K cash. How possible could or would 90% loan to value for a commercial retail property be for 6 cap rate? SK, there's a lot of details there, and the devil's in the details. So I can talk in generalities. This year we financed one of the properties we bought, which is an apartment building. So assuming, I don't know what you mean a commercial retail property, but if you mean like a commercial plaza, so this is not a commercial plaza, this is a residential apartment building, but we were able to finance a residential apartment building at a 90% loan to value through a private lender. But be aware that it comes with significant interest rates, right? So we're not paying like a 6% interest rate. So if the property was just a 6 cap and we had no plans to improve it, it wouldn't really make sense for us to want to do that 90% loan to value. Now, had that been a commercial plaza, again, it's possible to get a 90% loan to value mortgage, but the interest rate that you're likely going to pay on a commercial retail property is going to be pretty significant. I would be shocked if you're going to pay less than double digits. So just be aware of that. So again, if it's just an as-is 6 cap, you're probably going to get destroyed making those mortgage payments. So hopefully there's a plan to be able to improve the return on the asset. Hey, watched a podcast that talked about how in many cases BRRRR can hinder a velocity of portfolio growth because of time it can take in a real estate market that is this hot. Thoughts on this? I guess, Josh, I'd have to have a better understanding of what exactly about a hot market makes it tough. If anything, it's really easy to sell properties. So as long as you've got a decent pipeline of opportunities, you should be able to execute really well. The tough thing is finding contractors and building out a good team. But again, if you really focus on it, it can be done, right? And I'd really encourage you, if that's what you want, you just need to build out a very specific business model and make sure that the type of deals you buy are going to fit within the timeline that you want to accomplish, your goals. What's up? Appreciate everyone jumping in the comments. Raz put in here, friendly but never friend. Seems like Canadian society as a whole. What do you think? I don't know about that. I don't know. I guess maybe I grew up in a small town and stuff. So, and London, Ontario at times can even still seem like a relatively small town. So, there's silliness and there's shenanigans. But all in all, I think Canadians they actually do just want to be like nice people and left alone for the most part. And it would just be wonderful if our government would actually listen and just leave us the hell alone. Seems he will never answer YouTube live. Lame. I don't even understand. I feel like I've just been going nonstop here. I have a question. If you have 16 buildings, but you owe money to the bank, how you handled to pay the bank after COVID-19 if all your tenants left the place of students had no money, please answer. You just made up a complete made up scenario. I don't know what to say. So, why does 16 buildings matter? You owe money to the bank. Most investors do. How you handled to pay the bank after COVID-19 if all your tenants left the place? Why would all your tenants leave the place? Every one of the student landlords I know still is able to rent out their apartments. They may have to compromise their rents, right? I've heard of people going from maybe $550 a bedroom, coming down to $5.25, or coming down to $5, or heaven forbid, $475 a bedroom, but it's still not like it's a bloodbath out there. So I don't know, if you want to make up a completely made up scenario, Sensei, then yes, in your made up scenario, Sensei, it sounds terrible, but I just don't know of a single individual that's experienced that. And I do know landlords that have, maybe not exactly 16 buildings, but that would have a dozen or more student rentals. I was just talking to a landlord last night that had, he'd have 3 student rentals here in London, Ontario, and he's still renting out his units. So I don't know what to say about that. Vince Ford says, be cautious of a third wave and another gray zone lockdown. How will this affect the spring market? Vince, if anything, I think it's just going to put more pressure because we'll see less supply. So none of this is doing the average Canadian consumer any good. Hi, Matt. Like US has fixed 30 years mortgage rate. What's like in Canada? So unfortunately, 30-year fixed mortgages are extremely rare in Canada. You might be able to find a private lender, but I doubt it. Usually the longest term of mortgage you're going to see even occasionally talked about is a 10-year, but realistically it's 5 years. And for most Canadians, they're going to go somewhere from 2 to 5 years, most commonly 3 to 5 years. Okay, Stephen, you let us know when we're allowed back in Halifax, and I will literally send guys there. Depending upon the time of year, maybe even I'll come. What would it take for Canadian real estate to drop 30% or so? Great question. There's always a variety. Actually, I don't know if it's a great question, but I just feel like playing with it. So there's always a variety of ways the market could go down, right? There's always a variety of ways market could go up. If I was to speculate on what could drive the market to drop dramatically, obviously a huge loss of faith in our general economy and society, right? So, if you want to see a 30% or greater drop, all you would need is some sort of civil strife, civil war breakout in Canada, or probably even in the US. That'd be enough to really scare people away from North America. So there's one. But if we're talking about more practical versions where we could see dramatic, obviously if interest rates rise dramatically, but the consequence, and this is where it's important to understand, like I can come up with theories that could easily make it sound like, real estate's going to crash tomorrow. But when you actually look at all the different factors, we need to understand that our entire economy, our entire government, all the corporations essentially now are addicted to cheap debt. And because they're addicted to cheap debt, the government can't just focus on real estate, and it can't easily just prescribe solutions to real estate. Now, some of the things the government could do to try and ease pressure is like regulations, right? And we've seen this before. They could try and increase stress tests and stuff like that, but it would be unlikely, I suspect, that any sort of small regulation would ever drive a 30% drop. So I think that you're talking about something far more substantial. So it would be something really significant that would occur that would do a 30% drop. I think it's far more likely that, if we saw a correction, it would either be a flattening for an extended period of time, which you may think isn't a big deal, but a lot of investors, based upon their investment philosophy today, that would be heartbreaking for them because they all think they're going to get 20% year over year forever. Or, you could see a softening. And where I think you see that softening is probably in the markets that have seen the most extreme appreciation, right? Oftentimes, Toronto's the market to get the hottest, fastest, and it's often also the market to cool off quick. So sometimes, was it late 2017 when the Toronto market cooled off? Here in London, it barely even had time to cool off before we got into the next cycle, where Toronto was able to really see noticeable decreases, both in volume and pricing, activity, all that. At some point, does a condo become old, doesn't appreciate as much? It did, and I should look to sell it 10 years. I'm sure that there is a longevity issue there when we're looking at condos, but I don't think that you can specify a specific age, right? And even condos as a broad asset basket are hard to talk about. Where's this condo located? Because maybe it's 50 years old, but is it now in the center of the city where it once used to be on the suburbs, but the city has grown up around it and now it's worth a lot more because of the location? Again, things can evolve and change, but one thing for me is I don't really want to get into properties where I don't have a lot of control. And so for me, long-term buy and hold condos, if I was looking at decades and decades, wouldn't be particularly attractive because I don't have a lot of control. Now, unless I'm going to get really proactive, get on like the board of the condo and really stay on top of shit. But I know myself, so I would never become that guy. How much refinancing have you done these all-time low rates? Yeah, we're definitely, with the apartment business, we're refinancing, but there's actually been very few refinances we've done that haven't been part of like strategic renovations. I don't think there's been many like just, oh, prices went up, so let's refi. And part of the reason is because I sold a bunch of properties, so that's, part of it. Are you familiar with the Smith maneuver and have you used it? I haven't used the Smith maneuver specifically because I'm not really into stocks, but if you want to look at the real estate equivalent, that's called cash flow damming. And yeah, cash flow damming is a very effective strategy. I'm sure I haven't fully utilized it, but there's been times where it makes sense too. Raz, I like that, Vince. If Kanye did a rap diss against Drake, Toronto market would crash. I guess circling back to the Toronto market or any market crashing, if we all of a sudden saw a huge restriction on immigration and foreign capital, that would obviously really drive our market significantly. So as far as how to weather, stormy times, Sensei, what I'd focus on is like, what is a realistic worst case scenario? So a realistic worst case scenario isn't that your property stays vacant forever, right? There's presumably a price where you can rent it out at some point. So what I've always encouraged people to do is focus on investing for fundamentals. Here in London, Ontario, or like here with my portfolio properties across Southwestern Ontario, they're not just in London. But if we were to see, a 10, a 15, a 20% drop in rent prices, while we may not like it, we'd be able to weather that storm. Right? Again, wouldn't be ideal. There may be some tight squeezes, but we'd be able to weather that storm without really any cause for concern, without like things falling apart. That to me is a realistic worst case scenario. So properties that can handle themselves in a realistic worst case scenario is something I'm comfortable with. I don't realistically expect a greater than 20% drop in average rent prices in London. The reasons for that is we've got decent demand, right? So vacancy rates are low. Minimum wage, right? So again, you need to understand we've got minimum wage and the government's looking at things like UBI. This establishes a certain floor for demand when we're talking about like price per square foot or price per unit of rental real estate. So again, because of factors like that, I've got a lot more confidence in my rent prices here in London, where maybe someone's renting out on the high end of our buildings, someone's renting out a 2-bedroom apartment maybe for $1,700 a month. But really, that's a 2-bedroom apartment divided in two, and all of a sudden it's not a ton of money, right? $850 per person. Now, again, maybe things get tight, and all of a sudden we go from worst case scenario, $850 a person to $650 a person. Well, again, I've lost $400 a month in total cash flow. Don't love it, right? And we may even actually start losing money from a cash flow perspective, but we're not going to be just like losing money hand over fist, right? It's not like we're going down and we're going to sink within the next 24 hours. Instead, what this is like, it's a little bob or a little dip, but you'll have a chance to catch your breath, get the lay of the land, and figure out ways to pivot. So again, it's important to understand we're never operating in a vacuum, but two, we can also dynamically adjust and adapt, right? And that's the key, adapt or die. That's literally like the key to life and everything is adapt or die. So as a real estate investor, if you're hoping that you can just invest in one asset class with one investment strategy in one city, close your eyes for 50 years and never have to think about, never have to pivot, I think that that's kind of naive, right? The market's going to evolve, your city's going to evolve, the world society's going to evolve, and you'll have to adjust with the times. All right, guys. Well, I feel like my voice is dying here. I originally thought I was going to smoke weed, but then I realized that I was also live streaming on other platforms than YouTube, and I wasn't sure if that was going to get me in trouble. I hate getting my accounts banned these days because, I'm not important enough that I would ever get it back. So anyways, appreciate you guys watching this. If you got value, smash that like button, hit subscribe if you're new to my channel. I'll be back in live on this Monday. And hope you guys are enjoying the videos, and we'll see you on the next one.